It has been labeled the spiritual successor to the legendary F1, but the Speedtail is something even more inspiring. We'd been on the road for hours in which I thought I'd come to know and understand the extraordinary 2.1 million pounds McLaren Speedtail. And if it wasn't quite what I was expecting, that was just fine. It's always good to have an element of the unexpected, even with a prospect as interesting as this. I knew it was fast in a way perhaps no other road car has ever been. And fascinating, too, for its engineering, design, and significance. But then, and forgive this very necessary opacity, I found myself able to open it up in a way that had hitherto not been possible. That was when I discovered the Speedtail had been toying with me all day. After 30-something years of testing road cars, here was an entirely new experience. Design and styling. The Speedtail has a carbon fiber tub, a mid-engine configuration, a twin-turbocharged V8 engine, a 7-speed dual-clutch automatic gearbox and rear-wheel drive, so, in such crucial regards, is no different to any other McLaren of the past 10 years. Yes, it has a hybrid powertrain, but so did the P1 back in 2013. I don't usually dwell on cars' looks, because I'm no better positioned to judge them than you. But how can I ignore this? One can't. People will crash their tin boxes to get a better view of it. One bloody nearly did. Another on Woking High Street was so fixated that, had there been a lamppost or open manhole in front of him, he'd have stood no chance. For me, it's more than just achingly beautiful. I find it utterly beguiling. The way it takes a late 1960s sports racer idiom, with its forward cockpit and extravagantly extended tail, and transports those flowing curves to the present day, without the result looking hackneyed, derivative, or even conspicuously retro. Interior. The central seat is so natural, it's the driving position of every other car, and not the Speedtail, that forever after feels awkward and displaced. And for those McLaren F1 owners who struggled in and out of their cars, know that access is immeasurably easier here. There are 3 digital screens, driving data ahead, flanked by a sat-nav touchscreen on one side and an entertainment touchscreen on the other. It's that simple. When I think back to McLaren's hopeless original iris system of a decade ago, well, the mind truly boggles. Buttons are exiled to the headlining for functions you need regularly: engine starty-stop, doors and tiny windows, while others are banished out of immediate sight, ahead of your knees. If McLaren can reproduce interior forms of such crisp, clean beauty in the less unaffordable cars of its future, they will by themselves provide temptation of a new kind for the company. Passengers fare worse than in conventional supercars, and, surprisingly, in the F1, if the driver is short, and thus has the seat a long way forward, all will be fine. But if the seat is positioned rearward, there's simply insufficient space for the inboard shoulder of each passenger. Children and the slightly built will fare reasonably well, but anyone planning on using their Speedtail in its intended Hyper-GT role may find their holiday plans somewhat stymied by passenger seat protests if they don't do their homework first. Luggage space, by contrast, is fabulous. There's a load of room in the nose, a load more in the tail, and the almost racing certainty of at least one vacant passenger seat. Oddman storage, however, is almost non-existent, unless you count small cubbies beneath each passenger seat. Engines and performance. The Speedtail starts like any other McLaren, and makes the same noise, which is disappointing. Given it has a flat-plane crank V8 like every other McLaren, I'm not sure what I was expecting, but its hard, gruff voice isn't that of a GT, Hyper, or otherwise. No, of course McLaren couldn't package another cylinder at each corner, and for just 106 units, it would be ruinously expensive even if it could. But if ever a car required a V12, dare I say, like that in the F1, surely a Hyper GT, is it? It's hilarious how effortlessly this 1055 bhp car, thanks to the almost combined efforts of its 7x7 bhp 4.0-liter engine and the 309 bhp plus electric motor, slips into the real world. Because the hybrid drive is set purely for power provision, there's no electric-only mode like in the P1, nor can you plug it in, although you can charge it through an induction pad built into the floor of the hermetically sealed, dehumidified vault you'll undoubtedly have for it at home. This also keeps the 12-volt system topped up, so there's no need for a trickle charger, which is a neat touch. You need the car in sport driving mode, otherwise you won't be given the full 848 pounds-feet of torque. And you can't transmit 848 pounds-feet to the road through to 315mm wide patches of rubber until they're rotating extremely quickly. So what happens is different to anything almost anyone has ever experienced in a road car, and it happens at a different speed, too. It's acceleration, but not as we know it. This isn't a bludgeon like the Chiron, using brute force to shatter the air around it, but a bullet, so slim, stealthy and slippery that the air scarcely notices it's being penetrated. This is why the only performance figure McLaren quotes is a Bugatti busting 13.0 run from 0 to 186 miles per hour, despite the evident traction limitations. So when your nerve fails and you finally lift, the car, instead of headbutting an aerodynamic wall, barely slows. So you need good brakes and, once you've got through the pedals initially quite dead feel, my goodness have you got them.